Do you ever wonder, how can I optimize my pregnancy, my delivery, and postpartum? Well, some of you might think, Lisa, that is so far down the line. I'm just getting started with treatment. I can't even think about that. But if you're like me, you like to know things ahead of time. And many people do. Many people also feel like they'd like to understand how to control some of the things in this process because there's so much that's outside of our control. So, if that is you, you will love this episode. We're going to talk about how to strengthen your body and the things that you can do to have a more successful delivery and postpartum experience and pregnancy, of course. And we're going to be talking to somebody who's going to give us tips that you can take and put them in your back pocket or use them if you're close to this process and really think about taking care of yourself to the extent that you can. So, let's get started. From our Building Your Family community, this is the Building Your Family podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Schumann, author, researcher, and reproductive medicine therapist. Welcome to the Building Your Family podcast. We are so delighted to have you here today to talk about something that is universally important if you are building your family. And that is taking care of your body and preparing for birth and postpartum. As you go down the family building journey, you probably know how anxiety-provoking it can be. And everyone wants to have a healthy pregnancy or to have their surrogate have a healthy pregnancy and delivery. And in episode 144, which we will put in the show notes, you heard from Dr. Talabian, who shared with us how you can consider exercise with fertility treatment. And at what stages of fertility treatment is it important to push forward or pull back? In this episode, we're going to talk about everything after that. We're going to talk about how you can get your body ready for this pregnancy. How can you get your body ready for postpartum? And what happens to you through this process with the chemical changes, with your anxiety, and all of that. I'm going to introduce you to somebody who's going to help us because not only is she a trainer, but she's been through it all herself. Her name is Kyla Burke. You've probably seen her on Instagram and all over the place. She's very well known and a specialist in this area. So thank you for coming, Kyla. I'm so happy to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so honored to be here today.
Can we start with your own fertility journey? I think people would be really interested to hear what it was like for you, because I'm sure you can relate to all of these things.
Absolutely. We will start off with, I was diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency or primary ovarian insufficiency. I know there's a lot of terms for it, when I was 34 years old.
Wow.
Yes. I had no idea. My menstrual cycles actually stopped in 2020 when I was 32. And honestly, I thought it was COVID. I had got COVID, and I remember just laying in bed and getting hot flashes while I was sick. And I was like, oh, this is so weird. This must be a COVID side effect, you know? And
Yeah.
I remember like getting on Google and being like, are hot flashes a side effect? And I wasn't seeing anything. Fast forward, they continued after, my COVID was over and everything. And I never got another cycle again, never again.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah. And so it actually took me about a year to finally hire. I had some blood work done. Everything had kind of been coming back normal, or what they call normal. And I've always had a normal cycle, very healthy, very active. And so I actually hired a hormone nutritionist because I was like, it must be my hormones. I'm having these hot flashes. Let's see if I can hire somebody to get them back on track with diet, nutrition. And she had actually run all my blood work and done a Dutch test and everything. And she's actually the one that came back and urged me to go see a fertility doctor because my levels were all in the postmenopausal range.
Oh my gosh. That must have been devastating.
Yeah, I had no idea. Actually, I think the first thing that scared me the most is she emailed me one day and said, can you go get your AMH level blood drawn at like an any lab or like, pay the $100. And I was like, yeah, sure. No idea what AMH was. I was 33, I think at the time. No idea. And I'm like thinking back, I'm like, that's so sad that like at 33, I had no idea what an AMH level was. And so
Mm-hmm.
I remember Googling it before I went and got it done. And that's when I started, really freaking out because I'm like, well, what does this mean if it comes back low? Anyways, a day later, I think I got my results back and my levels were like less than 0.01 or something like that.
My
And I was
gosh.
like, so does this mean I have no eggs? Like, no idea. And I think that's when it really set in and like sunk in that I was like, my gosh, I'm possibly never going to have genetic children or
Oh,
children. No idea. And so I hopped on a call with her and she didn't obviously diagnose me with anything or even bring up POI, but she had basically just said, I think you need to go to a fertility doctor, just have everything looked at. And I'm the kind of person where I get everything when I get everything done. I go in, I was on the phone that day booking an appointment. I don't wait around. So I think I got in like a month later with our local fertility center. And yeah, that day sitting down, he did an ultrasound and he said, you don't have it. I don't see anything. I don't see any eggs. I don't see anything.
oh my
So
gosh.
yeah. So but the thing was, I think I had about a month between figuring this out, kind of self-diagnosing myself through all the blood work, and then going to the fertility doctor to kind of like research and kind of, let it sink in, right? And we'd happened to have dinner with friends of ours, my husband's friend and his wife. And oddly enough, we're sitting at dinner and I'm kind of telling her, what's going on with us. And they have 4 kids of their own and they both are done having children. And she just randomly said to me, well, if you need me to donate eggs, I would be more than happy because she has her tubes tied. She was done. And
Wow.
my husband and I, because when we first started talking about the donor route, because that's what, the first thing it says if you don't have, if you're AMH level, and we didn't know how to feel about it. We kind of had looked at some like egg banks, like just waiting for a fertility appointment. And we kind of were just sitting on it. We didn't really make a decision. And then she offered us this. And we remember driving home and just being like, it just kind of felt right, even though we didn't know for sure. We were just kind of like, this is coming from somebody who obviously loves us. And oddly enough, her and I could pass as sisters. We look so much
Wow.
alike. And she's just offering this to us just out of her like own heart. And, we'll know where the genetics come from if this is how, we have to build our family. And I remember us just going home and kind of like feeling at ease about it. So when we went in a couple weeks ago for our first appointment to like actually be diagnosed, and I kind of went in there already knowing. I said when he said, donor eggs or adoption, and I had mentioned if we know somebody, like what's the process with that? Like how does that work? I don't know anything about IVF, and he said, it's the same. She just has to come in and we'll do testing. We'll do genetic testing, make sure everything looks good. And if everything looks good, then you guys can move forward. And that was in March. And in April, she was in there getting tested. Everything came back perfectly. And she was having a egg retrieval by June.
Wow.
And we got 8 eggs and 5 made it to blast and 5 embryos. And then we actually ended up transferring the next month. And her and I kind of always joke because we say that our fertility clinic didn't like us because we were very pushy. She has 4 kids at home and she said, I have to do my egg retrieval now. This is when I have to do it. I have kids in school, like kind of working around it.
Yes.
And fertility clinics can take their time with things. And so luckily, we're in the Nashville area and our fertility clinic has at the time 3 offices in and around Nashville. So we kind of like, if there was an opening at one further away, we would go to that and kind of like pop around. So we got very lucky and we moved very quickly and we transferred our first embryo in July of 2022. And we got a positive and we had a little girl April of 2023.
Oh.
And we had a very good experience. And And I hate to call it luck because I know that it's not luck. But we were just very fortunate that everything kind of lined up perfectly when it came to our IVF journey the first time. I got pregnant, and after I, went through with a very, very healthy pregnancy, I had no issues and had a baby girl. I should have been her due date. I actually went into labor the day before her due date, and labor was just
Mhm.
really long. So she was born the day after her due date. And then we waited about another year, and I was finally ready to go, through with it again. So I always knew I wanted more than one. And we went through the whole process again, and everything went beautifully. We had no setbacks, everything. And it's funny to think back that I think all along I thought, my body failed me. Like I couldn't have children genetically. There's something wrong with my body. And then going through the whole IVF process and, having a baby in labor and delivery and breastfeeding. And my body did all of that so beautifully and, so perfectly. So I
Mhm.
always makes me like, it always boggles my mind because I'm like, how could that all have been so easy? And, but the whole process to get there was so hard.
Mm.
Um, and it's always
Mhm.
just funny to look back at, like, you know, that. But we went through another IVF transfer in August of 2024, and we got pregnant again on our second try.
Wow.
I just so blessed that, with the first two, we also did not test our embryos. So these were untested embryos, but our donor always jokes about, she had 4 kids and always easily got pregnant. So she's like, I think my eggs are just great quality. I'm like, hey,
Mhm.
I will
Mm.
take it.
Right.
And yeah, so then we had a little boy in May of 2025.
Oh, so
And
nice.
yeah, and that is kind of how our IVF and POF journey went. Obviously, there's a lot in between, a lot
Yeah.
of things I did during, before that we will talk about, but that's kind of my story in terms of diagnosis and IVF, and now 2 beautiful little donor conceived babies.
Well, Kyla, I'm so appreciative that you shared that with us because I think that, well, first of all, it's a beautiful story. I mean, what an incredible story and so nice to hear it. But also, I think for everyone out there, it's really important to think about this in a few different ways. First of all, when you go through fertility treatment and you have this devastating news, right? It's natural for a lot of people just to say, okay, I'm cursed. Like, if there's a terrible thing that's going to happen, it's going to happen to me because, you know, premature ovarian insufficiency is not something that you ever think is going to happen to you. And very often people don't look to their best friends or their neighbors and say, oh, I see this all around me. It can be so shocking to your system. And it's so devastating to go through that. And something that all of a sudden happened to you so quickly. It's not like you were a teenager and had some inkling of it and kind of got used to it over the years. It just kind of hit you like a Mack truck. And
Hmm.
so being in this situation and being able to rebound so quickly, and which I think is really important to think about, is that you were open with this couple right away about your fertility journey. Had you not been open, that would have never come up, right? And so
Absolutely.
all of these things that you did, really dealing with the shock and the grief and being open with other people and being able to accept a different way of parenting, all of those things are so hard. And any one of those moments could have stopped you in your tracks and said, I'm getting, under the covers. I'm never coming out. I've had it. And you didn't. You just kept on going. And it's so difficult to do that. I think maybe before we get into the pregnancy, you can help our listeners by talking a little bit about that. How did you keep going when all of these things were happening and make all these decisions along the way, which eventually led you to where you are? And by the way, just for everyone to notice, what Kyla was saying is just because one thing goes wrong, it doesn't mean every other thing is going to go wrong, right? And it may feel like it's all part of the same thing, right? But your uterus working has nothing to do with your eggs working, right?
Absolutely.
And so we really need to make sure that we take care of ourselves and grieve over our losses, but also realize that every part of this is a different chapter, right? So how did you sort that out in your mind, in your heart, and deal with all of these things?
So the first thing that I actually did, and I think this was a recommendation from my nutritionist, the hormone nutritionist, was to talk to a therapist, specifically a reproductive therapist that specializes in infertility, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, infertility, menopause, all that kind of stuff. And I did right away. I got online. This was also during still during COVID. So I did online Zoom calls with a reproductive therapist in my area, and she was phenomenal. We just talked through everything. We talked through all the levels of grief that you can go through, because you have this image. Most people have this image of what their life is going to look like, them having kids, genetic kids,
Yes.
and then one day you get hit with this news that that is more than likely never going to happen. So you kind of have to, sit back and reevaluate and kind of go through you're allowed to go through all those stages of grief. It is totally normal. So we did that. I did that with a therapist. That was phenomenal. And that is the first thing that I always suggest when I talk to other women that message me through social media is if you can, if it's possible, talk to a reproductive therapist, because people in our lives, even though our moms love us, everyone loves us, they don't understand that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something like to be told that you'll never have children or biological children. It's just a different feeling. So being able to talk to somebody that understands is, not on a side and can just listen to you. That was the first thing I did. And
Great.
don't regret it and loved everything about it. The next thing I did was I was open. I got on social media, and even before my infertility journey, I had a very large following just in terms of fitness. So as soon as I was diagnosed, I think a lot of people kind of hide or don't want to talk about it. And that's totally normal. Not everyone is open about, infertility, miscarriages, anything like those kind of things. And that is totally, totally okay. But I felt like in that moment, I have these followers, and if I can talk about something that I never have heard of in my entire life, I never heard of a 30-year-old woman going through menopause. And, I wonder if there's anyone else out there. I got on Facebook, I got into the Facebook groups before all this, but I thought, you know what, I'm going to talk about it and I'm just going to see if it resonates with anyone. And I started talking about it before I was even diagnosed, when I was going through working with my hormone nutritionist. And I couldn't believe the amount of women that messaged me and said, my period stopped and I've been having hot flashes. Or I even had women that said, oh, I have, POI. I've had it since I was 17. Or I had so many women message me. And at that moment, I was like, first of all, this is very alarming that there's this many women going through premature menopause.
Mm-hmm.
This is frightening. And then I also thought, this is so strange. Nobody's talking about it. Even before I started talking about it, I went on Instagram, TikTok, and I was typing in, keywords, and really there was not many people talking about it. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to start talking about it because I'm getting all these messages from women. So I'm going to talk about it. And it's not always easy to talk about.
No.
There's probably people out there sending your stuff being, oh my God, she, talking about you. But at the end of the day, I was like, if I can help one person, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. I don't care
Mm.
if anyone, because I know sometimes, and I don't think it's the word shame, but some people, there's difference between being private and being shameful. And
Yes.
me going the route that I went, I'm very open about, very proud of. And I know that's not the case for everyone. So I just wanted to, show people that this is okay. It's not nothing. There's nothing to be, shameful about. I know it's a hard thing to sometimes get past. And I think that's why talking to a therapist, if you aren't 100% ready
Yes.
to move forward with the donor conception, talk to someone. And if you're not ready, that's also okay. At my age, 34, my husband and I had just gotten married the year before. And for me, it wasn't like, oh, well, let's try for 5 years. Let's give it a few years and see if it naturally happens. Like just a miracle. We were already 34 and ready. And for us, I was okay with it. I knew that it didn't matter if my children had my DNA because I'm going to carry them. I'm going to be their mother. It doesn't matter. So that's why I started talking about it on social media, and just the amount of women that reached out to me. And to this day, I have made friends with so many women, and a few of them in particular very close with, and at least two of them we've become very close, and they've actually gone on to use donor eggs and have babies.
Wow.
And we share that with each other.
Beautiful.
And they'll even come to me and say, if I hadn't talked to you or I hadn't seen your Instagram, like I wouldn't be here right now, because when I heard your story, it just seemed so normal. She's like, at first I was so worried about what people were going to think or what our family was going to think. And she's like, seeing you and your relationship with your daughter, or how you went through it, like it just made our decision to move forward so much easier. And that is the biggest compliment and the reason that I talk about what I do on social media, because even if the person watching isn't comfortable sharing their story or talking about it, if they can see mine and it resonates with them and it helps them, choose the path that they want to go on, or it helps them, that's why I do it. That's why I talk about it. And so I would say that those are the two things that I did during my journey and still do. I still talk about it, and I still going through it, and those things, they just help me so much. And the relationships and the bonds that I've created with other women going through it has been extra, extra special. This is just so random, but the two girls that I became really close with, we've all had our babies April 9th, May 9th, and June 9th. All of us.
Wow.
All of our three babies that are firsts. And
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh
and
my gosh.
One of them had her little boy. I had my baby boy May 5th, and she had her baby boy May 9th, right after me. And we kind of went through this together. We did some donor groups together, and there's just been this little things like that are just amazing, but it's so special. Yeah.
That's incredible. Oh, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. So that's what I've done to, get me to where I am right now and feel comfortable with the decisions that I made, and confident and happy. So
that's a beautiful story.
Thank you.
Beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Really love it. I'm going to stop this episode just for a second to remind you that in our family building community, we have so much information to help you on your journey. We have downloadable materials, we have full courses, and a beautiful community and live workshops to help you every step of the way on your journey so that you can be well informed and also feel so supported. So check it out. The information is in the show notes, and we hope to see you there. As we kind of think about all of those thoughts, because you went pretty quickly into donor eggs, right? But as you know, for many people, their fertility journey is kind of fraught with ups and downs. I'm pregnant. I'm not pregnant. I'm doing okay. I'm not doing okay. I think this embryo is good, but now it's not. And probably this feeling of feeling constantly disappointed. And I'm sure you had this, enormous, devastating experience probably also put you in a state of shock too. So many people translate that into this idea that I'm going to have problems with my pregnancy. I'm going to have a miscarriage. I can't take care of my body. I can't do this. And so can we start to talk about, as people go through their fertility process, because, as you mentioned earlier, I think when you feel so out of control, it feels good to be able to do things, to be able to think about, okay, well, here's something I can do.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing people can do is start to prepare their bodies for pregnancy and for birth. And it's so important to be able to do that. I don't really know how you share that with your clients, but maybe you can give us some tips now to help our viewers think about what they can do in this process so they can get ready for a safe and healthy pregnancy and delivery.
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things is your mindset. And I know that sometimes it's easier said than done. And it's easier to, say, oh, just be positive. And I don't want to say, oh, just be positive, but being able to control the stress levels and, being able to work out. Like for me, that was huge, being able to move my body and the endorphins, but being able to have a healthy mindset is first and foremost, because if you live in this mindset of, well, that went wrong, so this is going to wrong, this is going to wrong, this is going to go wrong, and everything is just going to go wrong, then it just takes away the joy too. So for me, my one thing is, before I started IVF, I said, I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to do what I did before. I'm going to eat healthy. I'm going to exercise. And I know there's differences with different people, and, some people that are going through infertility, taking back, the HIIT exercises and the high intensity exercises is very beneficial. So if that's, something that you can do to, take a step back, do I think stopping exercise? No. You want to still stay active. You want to still do what you're doing, but sometimes you might just need to take a step back with the high intensity workouts just to let your body kind of just like chill and prepare and kind of relax. So I think for me, I stuck with my workouts. I stuck with my things, everything I was doing before. And something I see a lot is as soon as people think, okay, I'm about to start this transfer, I got to change everything right now so that it sticks. It's just, that's not how it works. If you're going to choose a week before your transfer to diet, that's not going to work. You need to start preparing far in advance if you truly believe that your lifestyle isn't healthy. So just healthy diet, movement. It doesn't even have to be exercise, walking on a treadmill, getting outside, Pilates, yoga, whatever it is that can take your mind off maybe the heaviness that's going on. That's huge. Like I said, not changing everything at once. That's also not healthy. So, cutting back on a couple cups of coffee, whatever it is, but just don't make these huge, crazy adjustments right before you're going to go do this IVF transfer. Because the bottom line is that you eating McDonald's the night before your transfer, or you having that extra cup of coffee 2 days before your transfer, is not going to make an impact on whether that embryo sticks or not. Your body knows what to do, and your body is going to do what it's supposed to do. And it's not because you worked out too hard the day before. You just need to have balance. You need to eat healthy, work out, don't make a million changes right before your IVF cycle. Obviously, if there's certain things that your doctor recommends in terms of maybe possibly losing weight or whatever it is, obviously listen to them. But in terms of lifestyle changes, it doesn't have to be drastic. Your body knows what to do. And I always tell people that when they say, oh, I'm going to transfer in a couple of weeks, like, what did you do to help your embryo stick? And I say, nothing. I just lived. I just went about my day. I did what I do every single day. And I just went in there and I did what the doctor told me to do. I followed all my rules. I followed everything that they wanted me to do. And I was hopeful. And that's all that you really have to do. You don't need to make these crazy changes right before your transfer, of course, unless if your doctor says so. But that's kind of how I went into it. And I always tell everyone that just relax, less stress, clear mind, healthy mind is going to benefit you. And obviously, I have never gone through a failed transfer or a miscarriage. So obviously that's not something that I can talk about personally. So I don't know how that feels. And it obviously is very hard. But for women that are going through that, it's not your fault. It is not your fault. It is not your fault that it didn't work. And I know sometimes you want answers. It's the thing with infertility.
Yes.
You always want answers, but a lot of the times you're just never going to get that answer. I don't know why I have POF. There's no genetic reason. There's no reason for it. I forgot about it, because if I sit here and I live in this, well, there must have been something. What did I do? What did I do 5 years ago that I thought, caused this? You can't live like that. And it's not a healthy way to live. So That also was helpful with therapy. That was something that I worked through. Is
That's great.
it's not your fault. It's not
Yes.
your fault if a transfer fails. It is not your fault if you have a miscarriage. It's just not. That's just so
Yes,
don't
it's a fact. It's a
yep,
fact, right? I mean,
don't
people
blame
get
yourself.
pregnant. Yeah, people get pregnant in, crack houses. Women get pregnant
Mhm.
when they're raped. There's all sorts of times where people should get pregnant and they don't, or when they get pregnant and they shouldn't. And so if the embryo is the right embryo and the uterine environment is right, there's no
Right.
way for us to know. And you're so right. And I think it's so good for people to hear you say that, Kyla, because you've been down this road and
Yeah.
you really had the rug pulled out from underneath you, and not carrying it with you into your pregnancy. It was so wise to really think through that.
Yeah. And I know it's hard. I'm not a type A person. I don't have a type A personality. So I do know that there are people out there that like to have a little bit more control. And, it's like, well, if I had done, I don't have that personality, thankfully, because, oh my gosh, I think IVF and that would just make things a million times harder. But you just have to sometimes just sit back and just, it's out of your control. And that's hard
Mhm.
to do. It's hard to do
Mhm.
because you want to control things, especially with IVF, and you just can't.
So
You just
true.
can't.
It's so true. Well, thank you for saying that.
Of course.
And as we're talking about this, one of the things that people can control if they want to think about, well, I can't control this, but what I can control is getting my body strong
Hmm.
for pregnancy and delivery. And I know there's so much more research now than we used to have on how important that is. And having good bone health brings you all the way into, your older years. And that's really important as well. And being able to feel strong when you deliver is important. How do people start to think about that and give themselves that opportunity to control what they can control?
Right. I think starting before you go into IVF is so important. And that's the same for anyone that doesn't do IVF and just pregnancy. If you are working out before, if you are living, a healthy lifestyle before, it's going to make your pregnancy so much easier. You don't want to start working out and strength training and doing all these crazy things at 6 weeks pregnant or 12 weeks pregnant. You want to start before. So if you are getting into the whole IVF, donor egg, whatever journey that you're going through, beginning your infertility journey, starting movement now and continuing to do it. I have a lot of people who will message me and say, "When did you start working out again after your IVF transfer?" And I'm like 3 days after. They told me that I was allowed to 3 days after. So I just went about my workout routine the same that I always have. I didn't change anything. I didn't go crazy. I wasn't lifting crazy weight, but I stuck with my routine and I did it through my entire pregnancy. I will say with my first pregnancy, I did have a subchronic hematoma at about 8 weeks pregnant. And I think I was cleared at 12 weeks. So I didn't work out for that little period of time. But as soon as my doctor said, "Oh, it's gone," I was back to doing Pilates and yoga and just staying active. Because if that's something you enjoy and it's good for your mental health, continue to do it. And you don't have to completely stop when you get pregnant. I know there's a lot of women, they will message me and they're like, "Oh, well, can I work out? Am I allowed to work out?" Or yeah, it's the same as any other pregnancy, unless, of course, you have something like subchronic hematoma and you're told not to work out. Obviously, don't.
Mhm.
But you really don't have to change much in the first, trimester at least. And then, of course, you can start making adjustments to things like planks or that kind of thing, or you just listen to your body. I listened to my body. I know my first pregnancy, I slowed down and I started just doing yoga and Pilates near the end because I was bigger and I just listened to my body. I didn't go overboard, but I also didn't stop. I wasn't afraid to do the workouts because I thought, oh, this is going to cause a miscarriage. So just go and do what you were doing before. And if you're uncomfortable or something doesn't feel right, obviously don't do it. Talk to your doctor. But I think staying active and staying healthy, and when you're cleared to do something or you're allowed, like you're able to do something through your doctor, keep doing it because that's going to be so much better for your mental health and it takes your mind off things.
Mhm.
I found it did. There was less worrying when I could get out of the gym and go on my walks every day. That's what I love to do. So I put a podcast in. That's how I listened to every infertility podcast that you could possibly listen to. And I would walk
Mhm.
every day and I would listen to everyone else's stories. And that's kind of, what got me through every day.
That's great. And what about this idea of, because people wonder about that, well, I really need to be able to be strong for the pregnancy. My body is going to be realigning itself and redistributing weight. And I want to make sure that I'm strong enough to keep my balance. And I want to make sure I'm supporting my bone health. But I'm also concerned about making sure that I have enough cardio. How would you kind of balance that for people in the beginning of their pregnancy?
If you're able to, whether it's, you know, chiropractor, massage therapy, I know I did a ton of I had a pelvic floor therapist, and that is one thing that you can do during and after your pregnancies. That is the one thing that I highly, highly suggest is a pelvic
Mhm.
floor therapist. I still to this day do not understand why it is not pushed more by OBs or,
Yes.
offered. It is crazy to me, but that was the best investment during my pregnancy and postpartum. There's so many things that you don't know are going on. And pelvic floor therapists are just so magical, especially going
Mm.
through pregnancy. And again, seeing one while you're going through pregnancy, not just after going through pregnancy, is so helpful. If I could suggest one thing, that is 100% what would suggest, obviously, along with, your everyday activities. But I know after my first, I ended up having a C-section with my first daughter, and that was after a very long labor and pushing for 4 hours. And I had a C-section, and I was so defeated because for me, it was, my pregnancy was so amazing and so healthy, and I did everything that I was supposed to do. And then I ended up in a C-section, and I just felt this like shame, like not even shame, but I still felt so disappointed. And
Disappointed.
I remember crying during it. And after, I hired a pelvic floor therapist, and she helped me bounce back. And, she was amazing after. And with my second, I said, I'm going to have this feedback. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do every single thing I'm going to control what I can do during this pregnancy to get my feedback. I'm going to do it. I did pelvic floor therapy. I went to a chiropractor every week. I did everything to get this VBAC, and I did not get the VBAC. And after I had found out that it's actually just there's something shaped in my pelvis that my children's head just cannot get out. Again, I went through a long labor and pushed for 4 hours and ended up in a C-section. And I think after that, finally having not it wasn't quite a diagnosis, but being told like you just one of the bones was just it's in a weird place, and babies' heads are just not going to get out of me. And I finally felt better about it. But for 40 weeks, I put in everything that I could possibly put in to stretching every day, Pilates every day, pelvic floor therapist every day, all those exercises. And at the end of the day, it didn't work out my favor. It didn't happen, but I know that I did everything that I could. And that's the
Mhm.
best that I can do. And I think that looking back on any pregnancy and any labor and delivery, like as long as you've done what you think you did, you can't be disappointed with the outcome. Or sometimes it's just how it is. I originally thought, oh, I didn't do enough with my first pregnancy to be able to have a vaginal delivery, but it just turns out that it's just the shape of my pelvis, and it was never
Just the
going to
way.
happen. And I was so thankful that I got the opportunity to try again, because the one thing I always told my husband is, I think the only thing that made me upset was, I went through all of this IVF and nothing was in my control. And I'm not I don't like to control things. I'm very go with the flow. But I said, everything that happened was very like, oh, we're going to get you pregnant when we're going to get you pregnant. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. I thought, if there's something that I just want my body to be able to do, is be able to do this naturally.
Mm.
I don't want to walk into a C-section. I don't want to have this due date of like, this is when your baby is coming out. And that was my one thing where I was just so hard. I said everything. I didn't get to do anything else, so I wanted to do this. And although it didn't happen, I still got the opportunity. And kind of going back to what we were talking about, I know I kind of went off on a tangent.
Okay.
Every single day, I worked on all my pelvic floor things, opening my hips, everything, working out. And although I didn't end up with the VBAC, I don't regret any of it. So that's kind of where I was getting at. Do all the things. If you want to do yoga, if you want to do Pilates, do it because it's never going to negatively impact you. So if anything, it'll either help you or, you'll learn from it, right?
So if someone's looking at their pregnancy and saying, okay, what is both beneficial and also going to be something that I could potentially tolerate through this process, getting a pelvic floor therapist is really helpful. And then you're saying whatever exercise you feel comfortable with, or would you really try to focus on weight training or cardio or anything in particular?
I think it's just whatever you prefer. I know a lot of doctors will not push the whole cardio thing, especially going through IVF, which I don't know the research behind it. So for me, I stuck with strength training because that's what I did before my pregnancy. And then I just added in a little bit of YouTube videos. I did like some yoga and just for hip openers and Pilates. I again did that on YouTube. There's so many free resources out there online, even with
Hmm.
pelvic floor. If you cannot afford a pelvic floor therapist, there are so many free resources
Yes.
on Instagram and TikTok. It's unbelievable. Or even people that are offering videos that are at a very reasonable price. So I think just whatever you feel comfortable with. I don't think one or the other thing is going to, make or break or change anything. I think just pelvic floor and I think just yoga is a fantastic thing for women for, hips and movement. But yeah, I think
Hmm.
whatever you enjoy doing and whatever makes you feel good, continue doing that because you're moving your body, you're staying healthy. And I think that that's what's best during pregnancy and for postpartum.
And since you're mentioning your hips and kind of being able to open up your hips, what sorts of exercises or types of exercises would you recommend for birth and delivery? Do you feel like yoga would be most helpful?
Yeah, I think yoga is amazing. I think working on unilateral exercises is so beneficial during pregnancy. And that's basically just working one side at a time instead of doing, both at the same time, because there's always going to be imbalances when we're pregnant. There's always going to be imbalances. So focusing on doing one side at a time is so helpful. But yoga is just so great for just opening up the hips, opening up all these areas in the body that are just relaxing, especially if you're doing strength training and you might be a little bit tighter.
Hmm.
Things like that is just phenomenal. It's whatever you feel. And YouTube is an amazing, amazing resource. There are so
Hmm.
many amazing
Yes,
prenatal videos out there on YouTube. That's what I followed. I would find a prenatal yoga for the trimester I was in, and that's what I would follow. And
that's great.
yeah, it was free, and that's great.
Hmm. Perfect price.
Yes.
So you're saying unilateral exercise, like being able to, because of balance?
Yes, balance and just most people, whether you're right-handed or you're left-handed, are going to be stronger, right, on that side. So although I'm right-handed, I do everything left-handed. I'm stronger on my left side. So you'll find when you're doing exercises on your left side, you may be able to lift one weight on one side and not as much on the other side and be able to
Yes.
focus on that while you're pregnant, especially just with the belly and being able to, kind of offset the balance. Again, we know how we are when pregnant. Balance is hard. So being able to just work each side separately, I found to be really, really beneficial. And that's kind of what I suggest when my clients are pregnant is just work each side separately and work on, opening up one side over the other and just our bodies are so incredibly amazing. And again, you don't even have to change anything if you don't want to. But I just found my right side would be tighter than my left side. So I would just spend a little bit more time on that side. You don't have to do them both at the same time.
Hmm.
Give that side that is lagging a little bit more time and work on it a little bit more. So that's what I mean by kind of
Yes.
focusing them on separately because they kind of need their own time and their own weight. So
That's fantastic advice. I notice that when I'm working out and I'm certainly not pregnant. And when I'm working out, I can see that one side is definitely stronger. Even lifting weights, it's so
Yeah.
clear. So when you're pregnant, that's so important to be able to have balance and strength, to
Yes.
feel solid in your body.
Yeah.
And then what about postpartum? After you deliver, what do you recommend for people postpartum? Because, of course, we know people feel insecure when they have infertility. Sometimes they feel insecure if they've used donor conception. Sometimes they feel insecure about their body when they get pregnant. And so there is push, unfortunately, I think, for a lot of women to say, I've got to get my body back. And they're not really thoughtful about taking care of themselves in the way they need to. So, what would you recommend for women?
The most important is don't rush it. Find it crazy that at 6 weeks, you are just told, you're okay. You can start doing whatever you were doing before. And I remember that first appointment, 6 weeks postpartum after a C section and first C section. And I remember all she did was she checked my gap from my core,
Mhm.
and she said, okay, you can go back to exercising. And I was like, I'm only 6 weeks postpartum. I just had a major abdominal surgery and you're
Yes,
telling me to
major.
just go back to activity. Thankfully, as somebody that, works in the fitness industry, I know when my body is, ready and when it's not ready. But there are a lot of people out there that don't. And if your doctor says, oh, go ahead, you go and start doing these things and you're just making things 100% worse than they were before. And I still think the 6 weeks is crazy for most people. There are lots of people out there that are these crazy athletes that can go back right away, and that's wonderful for them. But the majority of the population are not ready to go back to work out at 6 weeks postpartum. And I knew I was not. And when I was given the go ahead to go work out, that is when I hired my first pelvic floor therapist. And she would come to my house once a week. I did not touch any weights. I did not go right back into weight training at 6 weeks postpartum because I just knew from even my seat, I knew I wasn't ready. And I worked with a pelvic floor therapist, and I obviously had the luxury to do that, and that was wonderful. But I think the whole 6 weeks thing is absolutely insane. So when you are given that go ahead, if you feel okay to do it, absolutely, but you cannot go back to training core and abs like you were before. And that is something that not enough people are educated on. I wasn't even educated on that because I didn't know after my first child, like, oh, you just can't do crunches or sit ups like you were doing before. Like, that's just not how it works. Like, everyone knows how you feel after you have a baby. It just feels like
Mhm.
mush, but there's just no help or education, knowledge. It's just crazy that they just tell you to go ahead. So
Yes.
do not rush into it. Number one, take your time. Remember that, you now have this tiny human that you need to take care of, and they need you to be your best and have the best mental health that you can possibly have. And focusing on getting back in the gym just to get your body back is not a priority. Like, some people it is a priority, but it's not necessary. You are going to have lots of time to bounce back
Mhm.
if
Mhm.
that's what you're trying to do. I just think there's so much pressure, especially on social media, that, these women look phenomenal right after birth. And that's not, not for everyone. And I've posted my postpartum pictures, and it's hard to do. It is a very vulnerable post to post,
Yes.
as somebody that's been in shape most of their life, to post postpartum photos. But I do know that it's helpful because this is the reality. The reality after my first baby, I was back to feeling and looking like myself at 7 months postpartum. And I felt great. That was baby number one. My second baby was over 9 pounds, and I'm a very small girl. I'm 5 feet tall. I'm 110 pounds. This boy destroyed my entire core. And I have diastasis recti just 10 times worse than I did the first time. And I'm 8 months postpartum, and I am nowhere near where I was before I was pregnant. And I will have days where I'm like, why am I not back to my pre-pregnancy, size?
Mm.
What is going
Mhm.
on? But then I can feel it, and I'm like, I just gave birth to a 9 pound baby. Like,
Yes.
I just had another C-section. And I
Yes.
and I remind myself daily, there's no rush. I don't know who I'm in a competition with, to, look a
Mhm.
certain way. So I'm very open with my following and my clients that I'm 8 months postpartum. And let me tell you, the second time is a lot harder than the first time. And some people it's not, but in my case it is. So don't look at social media and think that you need to look like all of these people who are only showing you the best parts of their postpartum. They are not showing you the sleepless nights and the weight gain or they're not showing you those
Mhm.
things. So you need
Mhm.
to remember that you being healthy physically and mentally for your children, your newborn, is what's most important. And rushing back into fitness and whatever it is to get your body back isn't isn't number one at this point. Your baby is number one and you.
Mhm.
So I always say don't rush into it. When they give you that 6 week go ahead, if you feel okay, obviously, but start slow.
Start slow.
Yeah,
Yes.
body weight, pelvic floor exercises. Obviously, that is number one. I spent the first 12 weeks of my postpartum only focusing on pelvic floor and core recovery. That's all I did. I didn't even touch weights and do any like strength training because I knew that without the proper pelvic floor and core rehab, everything else is going to be useless. And
Mhm.
so I just wish
Interesting.
I wish there was so much more support for postpartum women when it came to pelvic floor. I just wish it just makes me so sad that, it's not
Mhm.
available or
Yeah.
talked about. It's just
It's
crazy to me.
it's so important to
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yes. And also, as you mentioned, we all have to deal with reality. You have a baby, maybe you have 2 kids at home, you're not sleeping, you're rushing around, maybe you're pumping or breastfeeding. There's so many other things going on. And so it's really important to realize, as you're saying, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's
Yeah.
going to take some time and some patience to get back into it.
Yeah.
And on that note, Kyla, just one other question I had for you is that one other thing that a lot of the people that I see deal with is getting older, because I see a lot of women who use donor eggs because they're in their 40s or even early 50s, and now they're having their first child or maybe their second, and their bodies are in a different place, right? They're starting to think about, what is my body going to look like over time? Am I going to get osteopenia? Do I have to worry about bone health and all of that at the same time that I'm getting pregnant? So, for those people, is there anything in particular you would recommend?
I think just seeing the right providers in terms it's obviously something I think about too. I'll be 38 this year and I'm, thinking if I have another, we're thinking about doing a third and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I'll be 40 by that time. And for me, I don't know much about that. But I do know that there are tons of resources out there, especially with fertility clinics. If you are going through infertility, super helpful in terms of, any testing that you need to get done. But I think just staying active and, living a healthy lifestyle is number one when it comes down to it. You can go see you can go see, specialists and whatever you have to do, but making sure that you're doing what you can do on your end in terms of being able to stay healthy, which protein, the right amount of protein, a good amount, eating healthy, whole foods, that's all you can control. So you can't
Mhm.
control getting older, right? So
Mhm.
it's hard because I haven't been there yet.
Mhm.
I haven't been there, but I feel like my body has gone through it with menopause. So I'm still learning about that too, because when I started going through all the menopause symptoms, that's when I started IVF. So my body has kind of been in this like capsule where I haven't really experienced it for long because I've been going through rounds of IVF and I've kind
Mhm.
of gone on and off HRT like in between and during. So I haven't really had the full effect yet. But the little bit that I did, it is crazy how much your body can age and change just by that hormonal shift.
Yes.
It's crazy. But you do need to make those adjustments. Like you may still feel young, but you do need to, whether that's seeing a specialist or, talking to your doctor about what you can do to, stay healthy. But I think obviously the eating and cutting out certain things from your lifestyle, limiting alcohol, that kind of thing, super important.
Yes, very important. And as you said, even the pelvic floor therapy is helpful as you get older, help
Yeah,
prevent incontinence and all sorts of things that could be problematic as we age.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Kyla, for all of this
Thank you
terrific
for
advice
having
and for
me.
sharing. Oh, you're welcome. And for sharing your story and telling us all of these things that are very personal and putting them out there. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me. And I always say, I absolutely love hearing from other women or anyone in, you know, the infertility space online. I love getting messages. So I am always open if anyone needs to reach out and chat or, anything like that. I'm an open book and I love chatting.
Well, that's wonderful. And where can people find you?
On social media at Kyla A. Burke. And then I do have TikTok as well, which is under Rich Fit, which is my business fitness account. So easier to get a hold of me on Instagram though. I do everything through social media, and then I have like a link in my bio where you can access I have a fitness app. I have all of that stuff is right there on my Instagram bio.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's
Yes,
fantastic. Well, that is very easy to access, and that's great. And so, if people want to ask you questions, you just recommend that they message you on Instagram.
absolutely. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing yourself
Of
and your
course.
wisdom with us.
Thank you for
Really
having
appreciate
me.
it. And thank you for all of you who come here. We really appreciate your time. And the fact that you're here says so much about how much you care about your future family. So keep doing what you can. As we said, there's only so much we can do. So we may as well get the right information and the support that we need to keep going. We're here for you. Thank you so much for coming. And before you end, please press subscribe because that's how we keep going. And I will see you next time. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this was helpful to you. And if you'd like more personalized support, more information, and more education, you can find it in the show notes under the Building Your Family community. We'd love to see you inside. And if you were interested in today's topic, you will really like this video.